here, if you're there, you might be able to, you're right at the sweet spot.
Our microphone and speaker arrangements have been working nicely. And
Would you like any coffee, Edna?
water would help me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, George.
It's cold. Is that all right? Or you prefer tap water?
Actually, I prefer tap water. Yeah.
Okay, so
we'll cover tap water.
We'll save this for later.
I have too many pieces.
There you go.
Thank you.
Do you want me to take your coat for you? Or is it, it's not too cold in here, is it? Does it feel
No,
comfortable?
It's very nice in here.
Good.
It's not too cold in here.
We had, Laura, you said
I now know how to turn the heat up in there. So woot.
how do you know how to do that? Where is the,
Okay, you know how there's that big glowing thermostat behind you on the wall? That's not it.
oh, that's just for air, that's just for air conditioning.
Yes, it's towards me, towards the camera, or towards the thing. It's yes, David's pointing at it. That's the one.
Just to
It's
the right.
that
That has
sneaky
never
little
worked.
devil.
That's
But it
never
does well.
worked. But now it works?
Well, it seems to work now that we've turned on the pump that brings the heat to this section of the church. So
Laura, why did you turn off the pump?
I was feeling evil, and I just, what can I say? My evil got away from me, and there we are.
Can we hang that up for you, or do you want it to be on your chair?
I think hanging it up would be appropriate. It actually keeps you warm at this temperature outdoors to have a fur coat.
Mhm. Morning, Chris.
Yes, today is the day that you wanted to.
Mhm.
Glory, yes.
Yes, exactly. Now we have donut holes too.
Ooh,
Wow.
I take it those are less sketchy looking.
They look round.
Oh, George, I have an envelope here for you. This is
Thank
a clipping. It's got two stories, but one of them is more important. We're
Thank you.
talking about being the baby Jesus in the manger, being where the children could pick him up. This is another story that sort of goes with it for Christmas.
Thank you.
No rush. See for next year.
Okay, thank you. Chris, are you joining us for adult formation?
I am, because
Wonderful.
I'm ushering at 10:30.
Okay. Well, maybe we should get started. And the way we've been starting was with introductions.
Right in, but I'll introduce myself.
Okay,
Christine Carter. I usually attend the 8 o'clock service.
you want to come over here so we can see you on the camera?
Yay, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Carter. I've been a member at St. Mark's for a number of years, and I'm a member of the Daughter of the King and head of altar ministry this year. And this will be my first time, I think, to come to this group.
That's great. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
That is terrific. Let's see, why don't we introduce the people in the room first, and we'll go to Zoom. I'm going to change the screen so we can see. We have the setting that we're seeing ourselves more than the people on Zoom. There we go. David, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm David Bolthouse. I'm the interim director of music here at St. Mark's, and it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Oh, well. And I'm Edna Hetherington. Been here for a number of years now. And, I'm glad when I managed to get here now.
And I'm George Smith, and I've been here for a number of years too. And this is not my first time to the adult formation class. So is Fuad gone?
He is, but I'm sure he'll be right back.
Oh, okay.
I'm Laura Waterman. I'm stalling for time. I run the Zoom sessions, and I will move us on with Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Paris Lopez. I would have liked to be there in person today, but we're not all feeling well over here. So hopefully we'll get better. But yeah, I've been a member of St. Mark's for about 7 years, and my family and I are looking forward to all being back there in person someday. But I'm happy to be able to participate via Zoom today.
And we'll move on to Lois.
Hello. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm sheltering again, which I hate. And I've been a member for what, maybe 5 years, and really enjoyed these 9 o'clock meetings. So I'm so sorry I can't be there. I look forward to them. They're very interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. Good to see everybody.
And why can't I? Okay, I cannot highlight Beth. I'm sorry, because you don't have your camera on, but Beth would be next.
Oh, hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm in my bathrobe, and I just thought it'd be a good idea. I thought it'd be a good idea to participate in this, at least.
This is awesome.
Yeah, and reading, I think the notice that you send out every week on the internet to let us know, and through emails, let us know about what's going on is really helpful, because it just piqued my
Wes does
interest.
a great job with
And
those. Yeah.
really, these are good. They always seem like good talks. This is the first I've been, so I'm looking forward to hearing what Fuad has to say. And also, I saw that is going to be talking about his experience in Myanmar, and he helped me last Sunday when I slipped on the ice. So, he stayed with me all the way up until Herb got me in the car.
Aw, so sweet.
So, I think I have a personal connection to this young man.
Yay.
So anyway, I'm looking forward to what Fuad has to say.
Awesome.
And welcome our new music director. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
And that brings us to
Fuad,
Fuad.
now it's to you, Fuad.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hello. So George asked me to do a quick introduction of myself, and I mean quick. So first of all, I understand the goal of these sessions to be what he called a facilitated exploration of the topic, which means I'd like all of you to participate. I don't want this to be about Fuad the talking head. Second, quick background. I grew up in Lebanon from Palestinian parents. I left the Middle East in 1976 during the first wars of the Lebanese Civil War. I've been in the US almost continuously since. I was baptized and confirmed Anglican in the Diocese of Jerusalem. Christianity matters to me at several levels, obviously at the level of personal faith, also at the level of historical and theological exploration. And then third, at the level of combating, if you will, a lot of the misunderstandings and even propaganda about Christianity and its role in the Middle East. Okay, having said that, I would like to share my screen, and I think, Laura, I'm able to do that?
Sorry, yes, you should be. I believe though that when you dropped, I did not make you the co-host again.
Share
So you are
screen,
now the
okay.
co-host. There we go.
Okay, share. Can everybody see this? It's just a simple Word document.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so some of this is
So
hypothesis.
Fuad, I think you could even make it a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And why not do that? Just because you can, you know.
Why not, indeed?
Yeah, I think there's a, I think even on in your browser, you can up
Yeah,
the.
well, down at the bottom, you're at down at the way bottom on
Oh,
the
yeah,
right.
yeah, I
Little
see it,
slider
yeah,
ball
okay.
bar. There you go.
You don't
Okay.
have to change the font size. You just move
Oh,
it. There
there you go.
Right, okay.
So just
Okay,
up it a little bit.
so I'm just sneak it across that. Is it
There,
better?
that's great.
Okay, so I think first we'll talk a little bit in generalities and then get down to specifics. So seems to me if we think about what caused Christianity to spread beyond Palestine, we always think about the role of the Holy Spirit and Pentecost and all of that. We think about the zeal of the apostles who went far and wide, particularly Paul, in spreading the gospel and in particular, taking the gospel to the Gentiles rather than keeping it as an offshoot of Second Temple Judaism. So the question for you, and I'll let you cogitate upon that for a second, is what other factors could have influenced or prevented the spread of Christianity? Not everyone at once, please.
Well, I mean, Fuad, there are many movements. I mean, Christianity wasn't, or Jesus wasn't the only charismatic leader. There were many, and some of them were within Judaism, stayed within Judaism. Some of them were maybe outside. I mean, but there are many reasons that those movements didn't continue, right?
Right. So
either because their followers were discouraged or they got absorbed by other movements. I don't know. I mean, there are many reasons.
okay. So here are some, just as I was noodling around this morning, I thought I'd.
Does anybody else want to add anything to that?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I was going to suggest actually the existence of the Roman Empire, because you had the road system, you had common language in a lot of cases, you had a lot of commonalities that would permit spread to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I put down a few
Excellent
of these.
We have just a few more arrivals here in the room. Joyce Fletcher came. Joyce, do you want to just say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody. So sorry we're late.
No, it's okay. And David is coming in too. He'll be here in a minute.
Okay. I think we should just keep going, George, given the limitations of time.
Yeah.
All right,
people
so-
come in, I would want to make sure that they're welcome and we know that they're here.
Yeah, thank you. So in addition to the sort of the two obvious factors, I thought let's think about the following. So first of all, and this was alluded to just now, adjacent, meaning adjacent to Palestine, as well as underlying cultures, could carry the gospel because, as you said, people communicate and travel along these cultural milieus, and that would give the gospel the ability to travel with them. All roads lead to Rome is one factor, because at the time Palestine was a bit of a far-flung part of the Roman Empire, but nevertheless the Roman Empire. Versus, and you can ask Nero and Diocletian and others about this, we're Romans, the Christians hate our God, so let's kill them. So Obviously, that didn't help a whole lot. Then you have existing trade routes, and I'll have a map to show this. The routes from Palestine down along the Sinai coast and down to the western coast of the Arabian Peninsula. It's a land route. From the Levant to Asia Minor by land, again, up the Mediterranean coast, the eastern Mediterranean coast, and then across the southern coast of Asia Minor. Shipping along the Mediterranean coast, there was shipping all the way from the northern coast, on the northern coast, all the way to the Spanish Peninsula, and then on the southern coast, all the way to what we would call Morocco today. The Red Sea shipping routes to East Africa, which would have taken off, at the northern tip of the Red Sea, and then gone down and over around to the Horn of Africa, the eastern part where we would have, for example, today Somalia. Then Indian Ocean shipping routes, which varied according to the monsoon. You went one way according to the wind, and then the other way back according to the wind, based on the way the winds were blowing. And then, of course, the Silk Road. So those are all trade routes. Any other, as I said here, additional factors to consider in the spread of Christianity? Anything else somebody can think of?
So for the Silk Road, remind me, what was its roughly its path?
Yeah, I have a map. I'll show you in a second. But the Silk Road is effectively the trading road that runs east from Palestine, principally, or there were other offshoots, east from Palestine through Mesopotamia, through Persia, through what we would call the republics today of, Tajikistan and Azerbaijan and so on, and then as far as China and Mongolia. Okay, and I'll show you a map of that. Okay, so and the Silk Road was a very significant factor in terms of going to the Far East. Any other thoughts before we move on?
And just that because the Silk Road is so interesting, I haven't studied it very much, but was it continuously, was there trade on there, or did it end up getting disrupted a lot? It seems like it's such a treacherous route. Maybe that's just in my own ignorance, but like other routes were, in the Roman Empire, were under the Roman Empire's control. That wasn't. So what was the reliability of that Silk Road?
Well, even land routes, George. There were raiders, there were brigands, there were pirates on the sea routes. Strength in numbers. If you were part of a convoy or a caravan, that worked better. If you were, you and mom heading out east, you are probably in trouble. But the Silk Road was heavily populated all along the road. So, you weren't going for hundreds of miles without company or somebody around there. But the importance of the Silk Road is that it ran through many countries. So it wasn't, or many regions, I don't think you would call them countries now, but many regions. So it wasn't, owned by anybody in the sense that the Roman roads were owned by the Roman Empire.
My question is, that make it less reliable, or did it end up closing a lot, or was there constant, do you know if there was constant movement or not?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Until the advent of mechanized transportation and more reliable shipping routes, it was not out of use as far as I know at any point in time. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see, where's that link? So Laura, we needed that link. Let me see where it is.
Oh, yes, it's actually very easy to find. It's just where our bulletins are. Let me grab it back up real quick.
Yeah, thank you.
because Wes is amazing. I'll go ahead and put it in chat.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the link you're talking about?
It's a document that Fuad created that Wes was awesome and put up on where our bulletins are, so that if you want to, you can download his presentation and go through it at your own pace.
But you're gonna put it up on chat now, right, Laura?
Already did.
Oh, good. Okay, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually only did it to you. Silly me.
No,
My
that's-
apologies. Everyone in the meeting now. Control
I've
V.
already seen it.
There we go. My apologies, everyone. Didn't mean to leave you out.
So for people in the room, that is accessible if you go to the website for the St. Mark's.
Just go
And
to where
then-
we normally have our bulletins, and it's the adult formation.
You can find it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Laura, I still don't see it.
It's it. Well, I mean, I can share it. Not a problem. It's in
Yeah,
chat.
please do. Please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Let me bring it up. Wait, where is it? Sorry, brain fart. Having a moment. You know what? Let me bring it up because I had also downloaded it for myself.
Yeah, that'd be faster.
Stupid me. I already had it. I already had it set to go and on full screen mode, but it was in the back, so I didn't. It's in the back. I don't see it anymore. Where is it now? Which one is it?
It's called.
There it is. There it is. Okay, there we go. My apologies.
Ah, okay. Now, can I get control on it or no?
No, you'd have to share it. You're gonna have to tell me when to
Okay.
advance it.
But you can do page up and down, right? Okay, so let's start with early Christianity. Now, we talked in generalities about how religions, trends, philosophies, whatever, could move from their original place of creation to other places. Now let's focus on Christianity. So we have the role of Paul, and sitting behind this, which is a very important factor, is the transformation over a relatively short time of Christianity from an offshoot of Judaism to Christianity as a religion or the way focused more on Gentiles rather than the Jewish community. I'm not saying exclusively, but more so. And of course, the more time Christianity spent in Asia Minor among non-Jewish communities, the more it changed over time. A parallel factor is that with the destruction of Jerusalem twice in the 1st and 2nd centuries, the Jewish church that was based in Jerusalem was weakened very much. When I say Jewish church, the church leaders like James, the brother of Jesus, and so on, who were instrumental in building the church in Palestine, their efforts were suppressed by the weakening of Jerusalem as a factor. Okay, next page, Laura, please.
Sorry, I thought it was on there. There we go.
Okay, so as you may recall, the Emperor Constantine in the year 312 prohibited the further persecution of Christians, and effectively Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. So you can see here in red the places where Christianity spread the quickest, of course, on the western side of the Asia Minor Peninsula. You can see red, and that's mostly where Paul hung out. In Egypt, of course, up and down the Nile, and that again is because of the trade route. And then Palestine, Syria, into Mesopotamia, and then to lesser extents the orange places. And what are those orange places? Well, those are along the trade routes of the Mediterranean. So again, if you've got people plying the waters north and south, they are spreading the new religion, of course, Rome being important. Okay, next page, please, Laura.
What year was that again? What, that was four?
What, 250 to 406. So, you know,
Okay,
what's happening here is in the meantime, we have the persecutions of the Christians, and that, but it's not continuous, you know, it goes up and down. And then this is what happens in the meantime. Christianity becomes the official religion. You have the two important councils. There were many, but the first one at Nicaea in 325. And the main accomplishments of this were try and understand the Christological issue of the divine nature of God the Son and his relationship to God the Father, building of the first part of the Nicene Creed, not all of it, observation of Easter, and then early canon law. Then in Chalcedon, and if you go to the Articles of the Faith in the prayer book, the Book of Common Prayer, the very first one is the statement that came out from Chalcedon. And if you ever want to see something where people tried really, really, really hard to find a compromise position, that is one of them. You know, I won't go into it here, but it was a very important point in the evolution of the church, because after Chalcedon, some churches decided to become non-Chalcedonian churches, which means they didn't sign up for the position taken at that Chalcedonian council, and that was the first really occasion for churches like the Ethiopian church, the Coptic church, to split off from the Orthodox church. Next slide, please, Laura. So,
Claude, I have a question.
Yeah.
So was it at that council where, like, I know that the Orthodox Church has a different observation of Easter.
Yeah, that's because of Pope Gregory. That's way different. Okay.
Okay.
So now you have groups that didn't sign on to Chalcedon. One of them is the Miaphysites, who were based in Alexandria, which is still an important city in the empire. And then you have the Diaphysites or Nestorians. And these two, let's say, groups of beliefs became very important in terms of the spread of the church, because it wasn't just, quote, Orthodox Christianity that was spreading. It was the Miaphysite and the Nestorian versions. And so you can see in the second paragraph that one of the emperor's wives backed the Miaphysite faction, but again the Nestorian faction spread a lot. For example, the Coptic church. And then...
Oh, wait, Fuad, I just want to pause for a second, because when we use this term Orthodox, right, that's our term.
Yeah.
And people confuse it with Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox, and Orthodox, of course, means like straight, right, or the right.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, we're talking about, when you say Orthodox at this point, you're talking about the majority around, Rome and kind of that early Christian dominant group. They had ideas about what Christianity was, and that later got called, or we call it Orthodox, but these other groups like the Ethiopians and so forth they're coming. I mean, they have slightly different ideas about theology and so forth. They don't consider themselves unorthodox. They consider themselves to be correct. But anyway, I just want to make sure that, because that word Orthodox now means so much, it means something else. So I just want to clarify that.
So it's like
it's probably incorrect to call this the Orthodox Church, because I think it's more correct to call it the Catholic Church. Again, not what we think of it today as the Roman Catholic Church, but I think that the term Catholic is more appropriate for that majority church that we're
I
talking.
like to call it majority,
It means universal.
Yeah, right, exactly.
but it wasn't universal, right? I mean, so it's kind of like
Well,
the
yeah,
dominant, kind
the
of the
dominant one, yeah. So,
hegemonic, hegemon, what is it? Hegemony,
Hegemonic.
right?
yeah.
Hegemonic.
Next slide,
I-
Laura.
That's good.
I'm confused because I don't know what I've never seen these words before. Myaphysites and diaphysites. What
Well,
groups
they
do they mean?
have different positions with respect to the relationship between the Father and the Son, the importance of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and eventually the role of the Holy Spirit. So, you can read up on them. It would be beyond the scope of this discussion to do that. But what you have to understand is that Alexandria, that was still a center in the church, became important or remained important and supported one of these offshoots. The Ethiopian church, the Coptic church, and so on, also supported the Miaphysites or the Nestorians. Okay, the Diaphysites, so to say. Laura, can we have the next slide? So, Eastern Christianity becomes increasingly Nestorian and spreads east as far as the China Sea and the Indian Ocean, and we'll have a map on that. In India, you have at least.
So, Fuad, just for Nestorian Christianity, just
Yeah.
a quick
Yeah.
the definition of that would be helpful.
I think I have one on one of the slides. Laura, can you see forward if there is a definition?
I know we don't have time to go into each of these different
Yeah.
things, but just
Okay,
like
here
a
we
quick
go. No, another one. Another one. There you go.
Nestorianism.
Nestorianism.
Okay.
There we go.
So their position is Christ as two persons, one human and one divine, rather than, if you go back to the statement that we have from Chalcedon, you're killing me now. Where are you going? Okay, go back to the slide that says Nestorianism, please. There. And then they also said that Mary was not the mother of God, but only the mother of the human Christ. The Catholic position was that Mary was the bearer of God, which is what Theotokos means. Nestorius, who was the Patriarch of Constantinople at the time, was condemned at the Council of Ephesus, and that council held up the term Theotokos, and also that Jesus Christ to be one and the same divine and human person. Okay, so then this got affirmed. Laura, help me, please.
Oh, sorry, you're still here? Sorry.
Yeah, right here. Okay.
Sorry.
Affirmed at Chalcedon, and Nestorius became anathema. So let's go back a couple slides. Yeah, there we go. So, and then, like I said, you have the role of Origen, who was revered in the early church, and he was based in Alexandria. A lot of Origen's beliefs kind of look like Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism was an evolved version of Platonism, which was obviously a Greek philosophy. And if you look at the early formation of Christian theology, there are some elements of Neoplatonism, some elements from Judaism, and even, some elements of Gnosticism, Jewish Gnosticism, in the sense of the refutation of those elements. Okay, then you have the fact that the Nestorians clung to Syriac, which was a Semitic language, and the Miaphysites get the support of the rulers of Ethiopia, Nubia, which is what we call now Upper Sudan, which actually means the southern part of Sudan, and Armenia, which hopefully you know where that is. Okay, let's keep going.
So Fuad, there's just a second. We're getting tons and tons of information, and it's a lot. So we just need to pause here for a second and maybe just step back. And so one of the
key points, I think, is that there isn't one dominant, I mean, there is a majority Christian kind of movement, and we're really connected to that one. But there are all sorts of different kinds of Christianities, if you would call them that, developing all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of them are outside of the Roman Empire. As you said, they're in Africa, right?
Yeah.
They're in Egypt, parts of, Africa, maybe farther east.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because a lot of these subtleties, we would consider them subtleties. Like, is Jesus human, divine? I mean, like, a lot of that's kind of been settled, but at the time, people were going to die over this question.
Oh,
right?
sure, yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's kind of an important thing. And to me, a takeaway is that Christianity has so many different, there have been different, even early on, right?
Yeah.
People struggled or held on to claims that actually they still hold on to 2,000 years later.
Sure. I mean, yeah, there are still churches today, like the Coptic Church, that are Nestorian, right? So yeah, although this stuff was born in the 3rd or 4th century, it's still around, right? Okay. The next factor.
Was the purpose of all of these different councils to try to settle some of those theological issues?
Yeah, for the most part, the purpose of these councils was to define what the Catholic Church believed about the important foundations of the faith. The first ones, you would say that they were engaged with Christology, meaning what was the nature of Jesus. But as these councils continue to happen, they would take on other important questions in the faith. Now, some of these, yes, arose out of controversies. For example, the Nicene Council arose out of a dispute between a man called Arius and Athanasius, who was the Bishop of Alexandria, and the Emperor Constantinople, who wanted everyone to sing from the same songbook, decided, well, let's have a council and let's see if we can get Arius and Athanasius to make up. It didn't happen, and Arius was declared, a person who held incorrect beliefs. But Arianism continued for several centuries after the Council of Nicaea, in particular with some of the Germanic tribes in what we would call Western Europe. So even if a certain party didn't prevail at the council, doesn't mean that the beliefs of that certain party instantly got wiped out. Okay.
So I'm trying to understand, in like 300 AD, how does the word get out that we're going to have this council, and who decided what the council was going to be focused on, and how long did it take to get people together to be part of that group?
Yeah. So
to kind of make those claims.
Yeah. So the Emperor Constantinople is the one who Constantine, is the one who hosted the conference. The invitees were bishops from all over the region. Obviously, there was plenty of lead time in terms of getting that conference hosted. Constantine paid for the travel and lodging expenses of all of these bishops. And those were the people who attended the conference. It took weeks. When we say the Council of Nicaea, it's not like they met for a morning. It was a very long process because there was a lot of deliberation, and all of the bishops wanted to have what they wanted to say. But eventually it got written down and became, at least for that period of time, the official position.
So Fuad, one of the things you said is that Arianism lasted for a while. I think it still is pretty much the dominant, even though that we've got the Nicene Creed. So in the Arianism said that Jesus is less than the Father. That was part of it. And I think for a lot of people, Jesus is like, well, he's a step toward God, right?
Right.
And that's a lot of what Arianism was about. And I think that that idea of who Jesus is pretty well established still. It's kind of interesting, like Arianism did not die out.
No,
In fact, it's kind of like
neither
embedded
have
itself.
some other beliefs that the majority hasn't signed on for. Although again, the church over time continues to split and split and split as people take different positions. But yeah, you're right. Arianism doesn't go away, and part of it, George, is because theological education is no longer an important factor in today's society. To the extent that people could actually grapple with these concepts and think through their implications, I think, for example, some of this Arianism that kind of is assumed by people might go away. But without, if you sit down as a student of theology, like some of us are, and actually go through these issues, you can figure out why there were controversies and what became the mainstream position. When I was an EFM mentor, one of the things that we studied early in the course was an early book, what was called Adversus Heresis, which means against heresies. That was written by an early father of the church. And the way I taught it is, okay, well, here is this thought about Christianity, and I'd explain it, and I'd say, that sounds reasonable, doesn't it? And half the class would say yes. And I'd say, oh, well, too bad, that was declared a heresy. And then I'd move on to the other one. Does that sound reasonable? Oh, yes. And, oh, too bad, that was declared a heresy. So, a lot of these ideas, George, a lot of these concepts were beaten up and understood and evaluated hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but because we at this point anyway don't have a culture of theological education or theological curiosity, people don't benefit from all of these hundreds of years of engagement with the material. They sort of start up at stage 3 instead of when the rest of us are at stage 78, and a lot of them get stuck at stage 3 or 7 or 10 or whatever. Okay.
But I think even when there was intense theological education, Arianism was holding on in the in the understanding that a lot of people have about Jesus, who Jesus is.
I think the terms father and son, that in itself is a little confusing because it does make it seem less than.
Right, the father is the top dog,
yeah, right.
and then you get the son.
So that it becomes hierarchical, and because at least Western thinking, we're very hierarchical.
And the Holy Spirit is like somewhere way in third place.
Right.
Yeah,
and
we don't even. Well, I remember when my nephew was about 3. He realized David was the person to come to with theological questions, and he said, okay, so there's God and Jesus, but there's just one thing I don't understand. How can God be God and Jesus at the same time? And David said, I don't know if he said to the 3-year-old, but he's like, well, wait till you find out about the Holy Spirit. You think that was confusing?
So, yeah, and again, a lot of these things got beat up and thought about. For example, Chalcedon, which was 451 AD, did grapple a lot with these issues, right? The role of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit and so on, and wasn't the only council that did that. There were others. But, here we are in 2021, and a lot of people, I would say, are not familiar with what happened at Chalcedon, nor have they read the Chalcedonian statement or understand what it says. So, that's part of what we're doing here in this class, but there is so much in the way of Christian theology and understanding and exploration. Today, I would say that we stand on the shoulders of giants in terms of what came before us, the Cappadocian Fathers and so on and so forth, even before we get into the 5th century. And, as we study these things, it becomes a lot more clear that the early church did try and work through them, and there are some things that we can learn from them as well. Okay? The document that I shared with you, by the way, and hopefully, Laura, you can send everybody the link, is not something that I want everybody to go through, nor is it that something that I'm going to spread, that I'm going to try and go over because it's 14 pages. But I've inserted a couple maps here that are important for us to look at, and then, you can review the rest of the 14 pages at your leisure since it's 9:46 a.m. already. But Laura, if you would go to page 11.
Page 11.
Yeah, it's a map. There you go.
Is that it? Okay, sorry.
Right.
I forget
So,
that I get there before you do.
yeah. So this is a map of Christianity in Asia. Okay, and you can see at the bottom left of the map, kind of the color keys as to what happens in which parts of Asia. So you can see, for example, Nestorian missions, which is the first arrow. There's a lot of Nestorianism that is going east, particularly north and east, right? And so that goes into Turkestan, it goes into Mongolia, it goes into Tibet, and so on. Then you have, a more southern trend, which is the Syrian Monophysite, also known as Jacobite, and or Nestorian missions, and that, is going down. You can see the Red Sea. You can see the the Arabian Gulf, or it's called the Persian Gulf. We call it the Arabian Gulf. You can see, down through the Arabian Sea and to the western coast of the Indian Peninsula. And then, of course, you can see the red line that skirts the southern side and ends up in China. Then, of course, you see the Monophysite Egyptian or Coptic missions, which run down the eastern side of Africa through the Horn of Africa and end up in places like Somalia, but also, which is not shown here, along the western coast of the Arabian Peninsula. So, over time, you end up with established Christian communities in Mecca and Medina and Jeddah and all of those, the major settlements along the western side of the Arabian Peninsula, as well as down in the the tip of what we call Yemen today. So all of these missions, if you wish, from the mother churches were very important. And now if you look at Asia Minor and Mesopotamia, right, you can see how many of these churches, and you look at the key down, you can see how many metropolitans or really bishoprics that existed in this area, and how they spurred, the spread of these missions from these bishoprics. Okay, now obviously this happens over hundreds and hundreds of years, but not thousands. For example, here you see that. If on the previous slide you see that there were recordings of the importance of China in the late 8th century, but then in the 9th century the emperors slammed this down, and nothing really happens until the 13th century. Okay, so it's not linear, and there are definitely trends back and forth, but it is important to note these things. So then let me see, where am I? Okay.
So Claude, one of the questions is, China has a very, obviously the ancient culture. I mean, what is it, the oldest culture
Yes.
that we know of, really, continuing, and how Christianity could enter into that. I know there's a lot of Christianity in China today, right? But given the language issue, because the Roman Empire had a common language, right? Whether that helped it get more established there, or whether that was an issue or not, is a question to me. Because of translating things was expensive and hard to do, and also the concepts. I mean, you've got the Hebrew mindset where it starts, and then that gets like changed into kind of a Greek. But then how does that Greek Hebrew thing then become Chinese, it's like.
So
it's-
I think
so,
it's
you know,
important to
mind-boggling.
understand.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, George, that, okay, so let's, can you see my cursor? Do you see my cursor?
No, remember, I'm sharing. If
Okay,
you
all
can
right.
share
So-
your document,
Yeah, no, that's all right. So let's start with, okay, let me make this bigger.
they're not looking at anything here, let
No, I
me
know.
stop sharing.
But you can see this map, right, on page 11. So let's take, for example, the Jacobites, okay, who were mostly in Syria and parts of what we would call Iraq. You see that word Jacobites right under the word
Yeah.
Syria and capitals? Okay.
The
So-
purple line.
So this was the source of a lot of Monophysite missionary work. Now, it's not like one guy took one of those red arrows and went all the way from Syria to Mongolia. Okay, it's a gradual moving from west to east, and so as this religion moves from west to east and starts picking up local adherents, it gets translated into the local language, and or the concepts get re-imaged into local concepts. So by the time it gets to Mongolia or China or whatever, the faith has been translated, if you wish, not just language-wise, but it has been translated culturally into something that is going to be understandable to the people along the way, right? So it's, we think of today as, okay, a missionary, he gets on a plane in Chicago and then he shows up in deepest Africa, and then from there, the mission goes on. That's not the way it happens here. This is traveling by land over thousands and thousands of miles. So there's a migration, if you wish, of the culture, a migration of the religion, rather than a transference of it. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, Christianity moving east in general. Now let's go down 2 pages, Laura, to the map on page 13. And this goes, George, to your question about the Silk Road. Okay, there were lots of different maps about what was the Silk Road. And it wasn't just one Silk Road, right? When people think of the Silk Road, they think mostly of the land route. And the land route that we think about is the one that picks up in the Middle East, in the Levant, and then heads east through Tehran and Iran, through what is now Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and then into China and Mongolia. So why is that important? Well, it's important because this was a trade route. Okay, there were, at any one point in time, maybe thousands of people traveling east and west along this route. And it was, for business, for trade, for commerce. But these trade routes also, because they were well established, allowed Christianity, as well as other thoughts and religions and languages, to spread east and west. So, consider this an early railway, if you wish. And so the Silk Road was instrumental as a vehicle for spreading all kinds of cultures, languages, and so on. And then, of course, the other part of the Silk Road that a lot of people don't think about, and it's not really called the Silk Road, but it's there, right, is the Maritime Silk Road, meaning the traveling by sea, again, down through the Red Sea and around the Horn of Africa, across to the Indian subcontinent, and then from there up the southeastern coast of what we call China. So in all of these places, again, you can see, other than the land route, most of it is along sea routes, and that's because those were the trade routes. It's a lot easier to travel by sea, assuming you can make a safe trip, than going up down mountains and valleys and snow and deserts and all that stuff. So here again is the kind of the path of least resistance, if you wish, for the spread of anything, including culture, religion, language, and so on. So it's like latching onto a caravan and heading east with it. Okay. questions?
So Fuad, one of the, I think one of the points is obviously, it's, makes sense. Obviously, this is done over a long period of time, right?
Yeah, hundreds of years.
Talking hundreds of years, not, as you said, not thousands, but I mean,
Yeah.
it took decades and decades. It's interesting though that, let's just choose China, that Christianity did not just bloom there. I mean, it touched it. There were instances of it, but it didn't take off the way it
Yeah,
did.
because the emperor at some point decided, yeah, homie, don't play that, and he was going to shut down all of the foreign cultures or cults, as they call them, because they
That happened in Rome too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the emperor there didn't want Christianity to spread, and it did. It somehow went under the,
Under the radar, yeah.
authorities. And in China, I mean, again, and I don't know enough about where it was in terms of the control and the culture, but it somehow didn't bloom there. It didn't. The emperor could stop it, right?
And he did, yeah. It took off for a while, and the emperor then quashed it. And we haven't talked about Japan, but the same thing happened. Portuguese missionaries headed to Japan, and for a while, the church was able to establish some communities there. And then the emperor in Japan decided he didn't like that, and the Portuguese missionaries were persecuted, they were tortured, they were killed, and sort of part and parcel of the hundreds of years where Japan basically was closed. It's an island, of course, or a couple of islands, and they decided nothing from the outside is coming in. Japan is closed. We don't want to know about religions, language, history, nothing. Okay, so that was all part of that trend. But yeah, after being established in Japan for a while, it got wiped out for centuries. The last thing I want to say, what time is it now? 9:58. Okay, see how fast I can talk with my New York accent. The last thing I want to say is, and this is really important, it's a matter of cultural perception, or even to some extent cultural imperialism. And that is thinking about Christianity as spreading east, okay? Because we're looking at this from our Western perspective. Well, you guys anyway are looking at it from your Western perspective. Remember, Christianity starts out as an Eastern religion. Huh? Jerusalem isn't next to Des Moines. So it starts out as an Eastern religion, influenced by Gnosticism, influenced by Greek thought in general, of course, heavily based on Hebrew thought. That's where it is born, right? Now, when you look at a baby, you look at where the baby is born, what's surrounding the baby, what are the things that are, behind the baby's history. All of those things in the case of Christianity, or the very large majority of them, are Eastern, if you include Greek as Eastern, right? And so, again, the path of least resistance here is for it to remain an Eastern belief, okay? Yeah. And then you look at the other side, the Western side, and who do you have? You have the Roman Empire beating up on Christians. You have Nero and Diocletian and all these other people tormenting the church, so it has to go underground. Until, Constantinople in 312 says, hey, these guys are our friends, and, they put that to bed. But the ability of the faith to move east and south was a lot greater in the earlier parts, in the 3rd and 4th centuries, because they weren't fighting the Roman Empire. When you moved east and south, yeah, there were many cultures, many other religions, eventually Islam that you had to deal with, but it wasn't one monolithic empire like the Roman Empire that said, we don't like you, you're out of here. And so again, there are fewer barriers to move east than there are to move west. And so when we say, oh, Christianity moved east, no, it was Eastern and kept going Eastern. The bigger burden was to go west. Eventually it did, but it wasn't born Western, it was born Eastern. George?
Yeah, but it's from our perspective, especially Paul.
Yeah.
And he writes his letters to the Romans. He's looking west. And
yeah,
west.
Oh.
Well, yeah, that's
Rome is
all.
west of Jerusalem, right? So a lot of his missionary activities are to the west. And from our perspective, it's like, that's where it really got established. That's where, I mean, we read letters to the churches in Corinth and Thessalonica and Rome. And, we know that Paul had a trip wanted to go to Spain. It's like, his whole imagination is west, right?
It is, and that's because
part of our background. And I really appreciate that. It is, I mean, Christianity is rooted in Judaism. I mean, that's where it's born, and then it becomes, for us, very westernized. But for, I think, Westerners, we feel like it really took to the West more than it did to the East.
Yeah, there are a couple other factors in that, George. Is first of all, Paul was a Roman citizen, right? And second, when he's talking about Gentiles in his mindset, I think he's talking about the Hellenized cultures around Palestine. Hellenized again means influenced by the Greeks, which really happened under Alexander when Alexander moved east and finally was defeated in India. But that Hellenistic culture, okay, was more or less continuous all the way along the northern and southern coasts of the Mediterranean. So that was Paul's Silk Road, if you wish, in terms of moving along where Hellenism was, especially since in the early parts of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century, if you were a cultured person in the Roman Empire, you didn't speak Latin, you spoke Greek. You understand Greek philosophy, you read Greek authors. And so, Paul, who knows Greek and so on, because he studied all of that stuff, is able to make that transition into Greek. And that gives it the impetus to move west.
So
once the empire decided, once the empire
to,
opened the doors. Sorry, go ahead.
We're at the hour we have to end.
Yeah.
But as I said, when Fuad were talking ahead of this, it wasn't to get it all done in 1 hour.
Right.
It was to spark ideas, and there's a lot that we've talked about, and it's been fascinating. Thank you, Fuad. Really appreciate
you have that 14-page. You have that 14-page document. You can refer to it later and hopefully keep thinking about the subject.
And so what Laura does, Laura, do you have to shut down the Zoom and then restart it?
Yeah, I have to.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
I
Well,
will.
Thank you, Fuad.
Thank you, guys.
Fuad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In a couple minutes.